We'd like you to describe the election, first off, if you give your name and your municipality, and to describe the election in one word or phrase. And sir, we'll start with you. Yeah, go right ahead.
You want my name?
Yes, please.
Petri Pukkinen from Finland.
All right.
From abroad, so.
So from a Finnish perspective, one word or phrase to describe the election, sir.
Surprising.
Okay.
Larry Fehrenbach from Harrisburg. Weird.
Maria Fehrenbach, also from Harrisburg. Unreal.
Malcolm Coe on Lower Paxton Township. Scary.
Mark Scaringi from Camp Hill. Change.
Mike Caterino, Boiling Springs, historic.
Carla Christopher, York City, terrified.
Rhonda Mays, Harrisburg, difficult.
Sean Fink, West Manchester Township, heartbreaking.
Steve Trimmer, Lower Allen Township, phenomenal.
Steve Todd, Hershey, revolutionary.
Bob Mustin, East Pennsboro, repetitive.
Matthew Kenny, Harrisburg, surreal.
Danny McCoy, Camp Hill, a mess.
Jared Rowley, chaos.
Randy Galloway, golden opportunity.
Vincent Blackwell, Camp Hill, another chance for America from God.
Cindy Withers, taxi.
Robert Campbell, wearying.
All right, fair enough. All right, show of hands, who are our Hillary Clinton voters in the bunch tonight? All right, show of hands, who are our Trump voters? All right, very good. All right, Clinton voters, this one is for you. One word to describe Donald Trump.
Scary. Scary.
Okay.
Scary.
Let's move along the row, down in front.
Slick. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's perfect. All right.
Frightening. Perplexing.
Uncertain.
Different.
I was other.
Okay. Our Clinton voters in back, one word to describe Donald Trump. We're a little bit ahead of us first.
Predatory.
Con.
Narcissistic.
I was going to say con artist.
Okay. Our Trump voters, let's see your hands one more time. All right. Mark, we'll start with you down in front. One word to describe Hillary Clinton.
Corrupt.
Mike Caterino, sinister.
I'd say corrupt.
In the back row.
Crooked.
Murderous.
Very good.
I'd like to know from a show of hands, I'm going to ask two questions. The first one is how many voted for a candidate? And then the other question will be how many of you voted against a candidate when you went to the polls? Do you grasp the question? How many went to the polls specifically because you wanted to vote for a candidate? We see a show of hands. How many went to the polls because they wanted to vote against a candidate?
All right. Do we have any first-time voters in the room tonight? Okay. Very first election. In the back. Let's go down the row again. This one is the very first election that you voted in. I want to get a range of the experience in the bunch.
It had been in the 60s.
Anybody in the 50s?
When I voted
Yes,
for 64.
Okay.
Anyone earlier than that?
It would have been for Lyndon Johnson.
In
Well, the first time he, wait, I think he only ran once.
That's a 68 then, right?
It was.
Or was it 64? No, 64.
Was it 60?
64. Nixon was 68.
Right,
Sorry.
right.
Mark.
It must have been George Herbert Walker Bush in 92.
Mike.
64.
1996.
I was Reagan's second term. I guess it was 84.
1992.
Probably, I'd say it's either 68 or 72.
Bush the Elder's first term, so that's 88.
72, George McGovern.
Well, spring of this year, primaries.
2008.
2008.
1976, that would have been Carter and Ford.
So Reagan election, first one.
1970, and I don't remember who I am.
2000.
So we have nobody here who voted for the first time yesterday. One person. Do you want to talk a little bit about why you decided to do so?
Well, I decided to go to the polls mainly for the local elections that I find to have greater significance and impact on my actual living. You know, as we say, politics is local. You know, all politics is ultimately local, and so you know, I wanted to show my voice and support candidates that I trusted, felt had my interests at heart. As far as casting a poll for the US president, it was sort of a dubious decision. I think we can all agree that humanity has its flaws, and they were expressed quite explicitly in this cycle. Very cathartic in many ways.
Okay.
And,
Go ahead, sorry.
and revealing, I guess, to say that I have a lot of compassion for all the voters and for the people who were candidates, you know, for what they had to endure. It was very tough. If I was a candidate, I'd imagine I'd be exhausted. And I voted for Jill Stein because she has a concern for the water protectors in the Dakotas, and that's a common, you know, that's our family, you know, that's America, and there's a lot of tragedy that's going on that isn't being addressed by either one of the candidates that were running currently, and I just think that's an atrocity that Native Americans today are not having a voice. And
I see some people nodding. Are there any other third-party voters?
Amen.
Which way did you go?
Stein.
Why?
She was the one who spoke closest to my platform and my issues. Pure and simple. I mean, when I weighed at what all four had to say, and I didn't check out the Constitutional Party guide, perhaps I should have. I wasn't even aware he was on the ballot until I saw it. I read everybody's impartially, and I said, Jill Stein speaks closest to what I want for my son's future. I didn't take into account what would happen if I didn't play this game. A vote for someone is a vote for someone else. I voted my heart and my conscience.
For our two independents then, where do you feel like the major parties have left you behind? What are they failing to speak to that you thought was an alternative in Jill Stein?
So much. This gentleman said it so brilliantly. There's a catastrophe going on in Standing Rock. It gets very little media coverage, and there's so much coming down the pike. I think we're in the start of a revolution in this country. I really do. And I think we have a chance to make it bloody or bloodless. But I don't think it's going to get any better by two semi-similar milquetoast candidates talking about great jobs, low taxes, and God bless America. I think we're far beyond that on many issues, not just that. That was very well put. I appreciate that. Yeah. I don't feel so much as I've not been included or left out. I see the two-party system as sort of like heavily burdened or overburdened with a sort of
challenging task to polarize votes, and it hasn't. It may have worked. It may have been very effective, but when George Washington took office, he chose no political party. He ran under his name, and that was his way of setting a precedent of the executive, branch. The commander-in-chief is non-partial, is non-partisan, as a duty, not as a choice, and to remain neutral in that position of authority, because that's our command.
I'm going to take a little survey here, and let me read through the items that I'd like you to show your interest in before we get going. I'm going to be asking you, what's the most important issue on your mind in this election? And I have 4 areas. I'll ask you to show your hand if you think immigration is the most important, or terrorism, or the economy, or foreign policy. Okay? So, how many in this crowd would say that immigration was the most important issue? And could I get a comment from someone on why they think that's the case?
Well, first of all, let me just thank the Patriot News and John Meisick for the opportunity to be here. I think 90% of the media would have canceled it. To your credit, you kept it going. As Winston Churchill, I believe it was Winston Churchill, said, you should be magnanimous in victory. And I come from that perspective. I think in the immigration thing, it's gone crazy. If you don't have borders, you don't have a country. It'd be nice to take in the world, but you can't do it. We can't absorb it. Look at all the terrorist attacks by illegal immigrants. It's something, I don't care who comes into the country as long as they come in legally. And when you throw the rule of law and have sanctuary cities where you're breaking the law, and then you have the President of the United States saying, fine, I have your back, you can have sanctuary cities. I see where it's headed. Look at Germany, look at France, look at Holland, look at Belgium. And guess what? It's coming here if you don't close the borders to illegal terrorists.
Okay, that was immigration. A show of hands one more time, too, so I can get a count. How many think that's the most important issue? 1, 2, 3, 4.
I wouldn't say that it's the most important of those issues, but there's other issues that need to be addressed also.
Okay, can I ask you about that later? So I am going to open it up after we go through this. We'll get right back to you. Thank you. Terrorism. Is that on the top of anyone's list? And why?
It's affected me personally. There's certain places in the world I would love to visit, but I'm afraid. I'm afraid that I'm going to be put in harm's way. It also affected me here locally. I mean, I was going back and forth to Delray Beach, visiting my mother-in-law, and they were down there being trained to fly those planes in the World Trade Center and the Capitol and the White House. They were learning how to do it where I was visiting.
And ma'am,
it's horrifying.
You had your hand up too.
Yes, that's the only comment you want is one version of immigration?
Well, you can speak to that, certainly.
Okay. The reason that it was important to me was kind of opposite from him. I think we're a country that was founded by immigrants. I don't like the attitude pretty much is that we're all here now and the rest of you can just, stay home. You're not welcome. We got here first. I also am a great believer in the Constitution, and I believe that our founders came up with a magnificent plan for a grand experiment, which I believe is what this country was called. I believe that part of it was inclusiveness, allowing people to come here to experience the grand experiment. And I feel that to throw up things based on fear, ignorance, and phobias may limit us in what we can be in the future.
I've been watching you for the last I saw you put your hands over your face at one point. There was a whole sort of symphony of emotions crossing your face. What was going through your head just now?
I also am full of a fear of terrorism. Throughout the course of this election cycle, I've received death threats. I have received threatening notes and letters, all from Trump supporters. When I said we are a welcoming nation, I was told to swallow cyanide. Terrorism, to me, are people with guns shooting up our schools and killing our children. They're people shooting our nightclubs up. They're people hijacking federal land with weapons until they run out of snacks. And every documented terrorist attack in America, as far as my research has shown, has happened from someone who was born here and raised in this hateful culture. We don't have any actual examples of people that have come into our country seeking sanctuary, turning against it and creating a danger. That's a fear-mongering untruth. And that's what I fear that a lot of the Trump supporters have made their judgments based on, is inaccuracies and fear. I understand the fear, but not letting people die because of it.
Mike, we'll get you in 2 seconds. May I answer that? Absolutely. Just one quick question. The notes you were getting from, I don't mean to be impertinent, but your ethnic or
because I'm African American, and I also do a lot of advocacy with our local Hispanic Center and do a lot of immigrant-based work because of that. And I'm also the president of York's LGBT Outreach Center. And so in ministering to those communities who are legitimately afraid and have been attacked, have had things spray painted on their walls, have received threatening notes. And as I posted how wrong this was, that we're all Pennsylvanians and we need to work together for a quality of life for everyone in Pennsylvania, I have received threatening letters and notes after threatening letters and notes. I'm afraid to go home tonight because of who my president is.
Yeah, I just want to say, and I respect the lady's viewpoint, and if she's getting threatening letters, that's horrific. And they should be able to track it down and take care of those folks. However, when there are some bad people out there, 9/11 was committed by Saudis who overstayed their visas. I don't think they were born here. Young Jill, walking with her dad in San Francisco, murdered by an illegal immigrant who was here for the 8th time. I don't think he was born here. So, well, I respect your pie in the sky view. It'd be wonderful if everybody was law-abiding and they were great people. But that's not the real world. And I think it's time that we look at the real world and not some fantasy world.
Okay, I want to move on to the next topic. Those of you who think that the economy was the top issue for you, care to elaborate?
I'm an entrepreneur. I have many employees that I can't pay very much. And due to the tax structures in all of the government, corporate tax, self-employment tax, I currently don't pay myself anything. And given if my candidate won, she was working on changing corporate tax law that would help everyone involved. And income tax reform would have benefited. So.
How about somebody else on the economy? I'm actually surprised there weren't more hands on that subject. We tended to think that was a big issue.
Yeah, I said the economy because I think terrorism and illegal immigration all affect the economy, so they're all intertwined. And I think a lot of the things that Obama has done that Hillary wants to just piggyback on have really been a detriment to our economy, especially the Obamacare. I mean, I'm just so grateful that Hillary didn't win because I think Obamacare would have just been an abomination and destroyed our economy and our country.
What do you do with the 20 million people who aren't going to have it anymore?
But I think that you're going to find that that the Republicans already have a health care plan. You can't be any worse than Obamacare.
They say they're going to repeal and replace with health savings accounts. That's a crock. That's paying out of your own pocket.
The thing right now, everybody in the middle class is paying. Would you like to be paying having your premiums go up and all your deductibles increasing, and you're not getting anything? You also don't have health care because you pay for it, but the deductibles are so high, you can't claim anything on it anyway. So that's why it's a joke.
Okay, so sir, you were going to comment on the economy. Did you want to talk about Obamacare, or did you have another thing?
I want to talk about the economy.
Okay.
Because I think the country laughed, not the country, but the Republicans in Congress, they basically slapped President Obama down when he wanted to talk about infrastructure. And what's Donald Trump say last night? He wants to do infrastructure. And all of a sudden, Congress supports it. They're just a bunch of political animals there. And they don't care. They don't care about us. They don't care about anybody in this room. They only care about themselves and having themselves reelected.
Okay, last topic. Did any of you vote according to the most important issue being foreign policy? Yes, ma'am.
I am an English as a second language kid, back before it was really fashionable. And I am appalled at the idea that our president would want to, with one brush, tar a whole religion of people. It's the no Muslims, period. There were Muslims who committed horrible things, but that is not every Muslim who would want to come here. And I have enjoyed traveling abroad. I have been welcomed abroad in countries where I speak and where I don't speak the language. And I just hate the thought of someone going abroad to represent our country who is not welcome in the host country. And this has been, I think it was the mayor of London who said one of the candidates would not be welcome in London. That's a horrible reputation to develop.
Can I make a 10-second comment?
So we've got a bunch of hands up.
So far as immigration and I'm curious of how many people have read the Quran. I'm working my way through it, and how many times it says what you can do to infidels and things like that. So I've been asking my friends to read the Quran, and I'm working on that to have a fact-based history of the Muslim culture, which has for 1,400 years gone from a tiny place in Saudi Arabia, moved straight across North Africa by the sword, conquered all the way halfway up through France, took millions of slaves, locked up the Mediterranean with the Barbary pirates until Jefferson had to create the Marines to take care of them. They came around Turkey, created Turkey, the Ottoman Empire, went up through Europe and kept going. So I think this has continued jihad for 1,400 years straight by the sword and blood. Now when it comes to America being a melting pot, we like people, but we are not a homeless shelter for the world. We have $20 trillion in debt. We have 22 veterans killing themselves by suicide, committing suicide every day. We have divorces, we have abortions, we have elevated bankruptcies, families breaking apart, orphans, murders, all sorts of things show that our country is falling apart at the seams, okay? Children in America going to bed hungry. So many people, so many issues that we have, health issues. We need to pull in and take care of America first, and we will have an ability to help other people. But that is a choice that Americans make. That is a choice. It is not a right for people to come here. In the olden days, we used to set rules for people to come in. We brought people in to add to the skills that we needed, labor that we needed, specialties that we needed, engineering, science, even artists and things like that, dance people. We brought them in to build America, not be a cost to what we have. We are a melting pot, but to have a big cost, okay, to bring them in, to house them, to clothe them, 29 languages in one school district, translators they had to pay for. So we are overtaxed. I'm just saying we need to build ourselves back up.
You paint a very dire picture of this country, and that's frightening. That is really frightening. My grandparents, all four of my grandparents were immigrants to this country. Legal immigrants. That doesn't mean everybody that comes to this country is an illegal immigrant. Not everybody. But you said we got to take care of America first.
I would do this in order.
That's what America was built on. Was immigration.
Thank you. The gentleman in blue has been waiting to speak, and I know I want to get back to you about your top issue. So,
in regards to the immigration issue, and you can Google this any time of the day or night, look at what is expected of somebody immigrating into Canada. Canada's a good neighbor of ours. They're a reasonable country. They're run by a liberal government with Trudeau in office. And part of that talks about you need to fit into the culture of Canada. If you have a DUI, see ya, toodaloos. You're not getting into Canada. You can't even go on vacation in Canada with a DUI on your record. When you look at the requirements for other countries on immigration, the U.S. is a free-for-all. It's no wonder they're coming. They're swimming across across the Atlantic Ocean. Who wouldn't? They can get in, they can get put on welfare, and then they'll be forgiven for it. That is an absolute insult to anybody who has ever come across this country legally, period.
Robert, it looked like you wanted to say something?
One of the, it's kind of a offshoot topic, but I'm a teacher and I work with students, and one of the things that I brought here was quotes that I got today from my students who were feeling a lot of emotions about the results last night. But one of the things that I saw happening over the course of this election cycle, and it's trended in our culture for years prior to this election cycle, is this devaluing of quality information. It's something that happens with the rise of the internet. When we can say, you can Google this, that's fine, but the results you get on Google, they're not all going to be of equal quality in terms of quality of information, and no one's looking at really examining sources anymore. And then we have rhetoric rising up in this election where suddenly reputable news sources are being tarnished for being part of the establishment or some kind of left-wing media conspiracy, which is impossible to organize, frankly. And yet, people constantly sharing materials from news sources started in someone's garage of incredibly dubious quality that aren't fact-checked in any way, that aren't sourced. So people can literally make up anything they want, put it on the internet, and then if it goes viral, 17,000 people have shared it on Facebook, and then people get to cite it as, this happened. And yet, if you actually have to do the work that professional journalists do and verify the information and be able to source it and back it up, you find it's nothing. It's completely false. And yet, then organizations that do that, like Snopes and things, get tarnished with the same kind of brush. Like, oh no, that's biased. It's like, no, that exists to be a
So it's
fact-checking
okay
organization.
if Brian Williams tells you he flies in for sniper fire? Come on.
And he can get
And he paid the penalty for that, didn't he?
Right.
He paid the penalty for it.
We want to make sure everybody gets a chance to talk tonight, so.
Ma'am, you please, you have to.
The question was about foreign policy, and I think we've gotten off track, and it's very concerning to me to have Donald Trump in charge of our foreign policy. And if anybody doesn't agree with that, I don't know what news it's my turn, sir.
Sure.
He is quick to anger, much like what we're hearing in here, and that is not what we need in a president. We need somebody who is building a nation, not destroying it. And I feel completely destroyed. I am heartbroken. I have twin daughters who are listening to the things that he says when they watch their silly animal videos on YouTube. And it's appalling. It's appalling. And I didn't vote for foreign policy, I vote for women's rights. And you didn't bring that up. And I vote for a lot of other things you didn't bring up too. But foreign policy, he is dangerous. He is a liar. He is never consistent. He tells the same, two different stories in the same conversation. I don't trust him to go to any other country and represent us. And I'm disappointed that we're celebrating somebody who is so dangerous.
Rhonda.
Yeah, I think you bring up an absolutely fantastic point. One of the things with Donald Trump is, of course, he has this business empire. We don't really know what entanglements he has with foreign powers, Russia in particular. Mr. Trump has not really clearly stated any kind of foreign policy at all that I could discern while he was speaking during the campaign. Just trying to parse where he stands as far as foreign policy is concerned, what his legal entanglements are with foreign powers throughout the world is it's very concerning that we really don't have a good idea of where he stands. We have heard about him being against TPP. Well, so is Hillary Clinton. She evolved on that, and just as a lot of other candidates would evolve their policies as they hear back from the public. So they kind of are in the same wave with that. I can understand that there's some issues, some concerns about our economy and jobs leaving this country, which Mr. Trump had a lot to do with that, himself, where he didn't manufacture anything in this country. He just built a hotel in Washington, D.C. I used to go to the post office pavilion all the time. It's a beautiful place. He took it over, rebuilt it, and he's using foreign steel. How can you trust someone that says one thing, but his whole life has been based on hurting you as an American worker, as a person who is trying to contribute to the economy of the United States. Religiously, we really start stepping on very shaky ground when we start talking about other people's religion and what's in their religious texts, because you could probably say the same thing about Christianity.
You can.
Now we have brown people coming into the community. It used to be the Irish, it used to be the Catholics, it used to be whoever was coming from Europe. There is a habit of getting very insular and nationalistic about other people coming into the country. Now we're building a wall in Mexico. I have children that are African American, ethnically Hispanic. Their father is a Hispanic immigrant. And I have to explain to my daughter what he's saying, and my son, they're twins. What does he mean when he says that he's going to build a wall and keep out people? It's very difficult to explain to our children what he said, the foul things that he said during the campaign about women. As a minority, I was extremely concerned and disturbed by a lot of the things that he said about minorities in general. So a lot of Mr. Trump's rhetoric and demagoguery was very concerning, and you can celebrate or you can be concerned. But I think that all of our evaluations of him is probably valid.
And we got about 20 minutes left and rather a lot of ground to cover. Ma'am, you mentioned women's rights. Any issues that have not been touched on in that top 5 that you think that need to be talked about?
Human rights I feel like in terms of the diversity that represents America, there are so many groups that are part of our country, people who are born here, people who work here, people who contribute, LGBT rights, and the fact that Donald Trump has said that he does not want to preserve gay marriage and promote legal equality. I think the different minority groups that have huge issues. We've seen such a racial divide growing in our country, and instead of showing that he's willing to work towards reconciliation, that we've seen so many other hate groups rise up. I think it's important to note that it's not just particularly Trump himself. It's who are the Donald Trump supporters, and who are the groups that are endorsing and feeling a voice now, and who are we seeing pop up around the country and start to act out because they feel that they can. Even if Donald Trump would not support or isn't a member of the KKK, isn't a member of white supremacist groups, there are a lot of followers of his that see his presidency as permission to attack others. There are people that are saying things against women, reproductive rights, all of these things that affect tons and tons of people in smaller areas. And now all those people feel afraid, are pulling back, are saying, I'm frightened of trying to take part, my rights aren't protected. I think that Donald Trump, not personally, but because of what people who follow him believe in, we can very conceivably see a total collapse of any potential for unity and for working together in this country.
Before we throw it open to rebuttals, because I see a couple of you champing at the bit to get this. Anyone who has an issue they think is not being broached so far. All right, let's, our fellows in the back. I'm sorry. Randy, quick.
Crime and punishment.
Okay, next.
The desire to remove us from NAFTA and the 40% import tax from China.
Student loans, holding.
Education.
All right. I saw one more hand on issues, I think. Matthew.
The environment.
Cool. All right. Quick.
I just want to respond. I'll be as quickly as I can. I wasn't going to bring this subject up, but being the young lady here brought it up. You talk about division. The last 8 years, we have his mentor was an anarchist, and he's now a professor. Barack Obama has divided this nation so badly. What he's done is just beyond the pale. You talk about someone who, from day one, criticized the police in Cambridge before he had all the facts. As his mentor said, if you destroy the middle class, then you're fine. You can do this. He has, and I think part of the election was because of a referendum on his policies that basically showed that he has divided the country in every way, shape, and form. I'll just throw out as far as Benghazi, four people dead, and I think that we haven't had immigration since 1918 to 1965 while people assimilated. So thank you for your time, and I appreciate that.
That's real fast.
Okay, real short. How about Black Lives Matter? Having a right and coming out and doing things, and it's spreading. And the other word is fear. I don't think on the Trump side I'm hearing fear, but from other people I'm hearing fear, and I'm also hearing hearsay without knowing Donald Trump as an individual. These rumors, I believe it's slander. Do they know him? Have they read his books?
It comes from his words. That's how people know him, from his words.
And the same thing can be said about Hillary.
Absolutely.
It's your job as a voter to dig into people, and I've dug into Donald Trump. I know him.
Okay, the last few questions we want to get to tonight, and I can't believe how quickly this is going, is some questions for looking toward our future under a new administration and circling around to what can we do to unify, what can we do to move forward. So my first question is, I'd like your best advice for the new president when he takes office. And who haven't we heard from?
Sitting in review for a little bit.
Pardon me?
We haven't heard from you for a little. What would be your advice for the incoming president?
I would advise him to take a good look at what he said today when he did his conciliatory speech. I would highly recommend that he review it, that he look at it, and that he make a commitment to what he said today. Because it's the only thing that I've heard come out of that man's mouth in this whole campaign that I could say I could support if he means it.
Mark, how about it? What would be your advice for Mr. Trump?
Well, my advice to Donald Trump would be to try not to change. And I've been to Washington, D.C., I've advised U.S. senators and attorney generals, and once you get into office, there's tremendous pressure on you from all of the power players and the special interest groups, the establishment, if you will, who all have a vested interest in the policies that are being discussed and debated, and it's very hard to resist that pressure. And so Donald Trump came from nowhere politically to now the highest office in the land because, in part, he stuck to some of the basic core principles of his campaign. And so my advice would be to him is to continue to do what was successful for you in the first place and resist the temptations that you're going to receive in Washington, D.C.
One more Clinton voter advice. Sir.
He has to listen. He has to realize how his actions could have extreme consequences, not only domestically, but worldwide. So he has to look at himself psychologically and see that he can be a loose cannon. I think he has the ability to calm down. I mean, if you read stories about him, he does have that ability, but this is a different ballgame. So he needs to sit and listen first for a while before he starts doing these executive orders the first 100 days. Otherwise, I think we're going to be in big
Zip
trouble.
across one more Trump voter and we'll move on.
Yeah, the thing about Donald Trump is he evolves, okay? I mean, I don't think he's the same person now since he realized he's president as what he was when he was running the primaries. He's able to, I think, learn because you see him evolve with the people that he surrounded himself with, sort of molding him, changing from the way he was to the way he is now. If you listen to the way he's been talking ever since he's won the election, it's a lot different than when he was running against Hillary or against the other guys in the primaries. Okay, I think what you have to do is to stop all this fear and all this fear mongering about him. Okay, because it doesn't get you anywhere. Okay, all these accusations that he's this and he's that. Okay, that doesn't do anything to bring yourselves together. Okay, it really doesn't.
He needs to be the president for all of us. And that's just the bottom line. It doesn't feel that way right now. And maybe if he's a good president, he'll bring us all together and we'll all be, I'm rooting for him because I have a family that needs it.
Let's hear from all the millennials in the back. Danny, you were talking about student loans, which is something that hasn't come up, but I know it's a big issue for people in their 20s. What advice would you have for Mr. Trump?
My advice wouldn't be, my one piece of advice I don't think would be student loans. It would be to not repeal Obamacare in his first 100 days. But
first day.
First day, yeah, he said. And
Refill
also,
it for sure.
he said the first day was to throw voters away to trash. I would say that's another ridiculously bad decision right there. And just see student loans and people my age, mid-20s, early 30s, going through college, really being held back by them and struggling, and needing some kind of system in place to facilitate growth while also being able to get an education without being broke for 50 years.
One last one here. We'll try to cover as many people as we possibly can. Your one piece of advice for your fellow Americans on how we can come together as a country when we all wake